session. So we're going to record this entire session today, and once it's all done, this recording and the slides we're using today will be made available to all of you. Okay, so those will be emailed out from YouthMappers to all of you here today, and everybody that has registered for this particular training. Obviously, we had a number of people register, but not everybody can join due to other obligations, time zones, whatnot. So we'll make sure everybody has all the materials. If for some reason you're watching and then you get kicked off because of your internet connection or something, don't worry. Come on back in and join. Ruth is going to be monitoring the waiting room, and she'll let anybody in who's there. Okay, she'll let everybody in. So don't worry about if you lose your connection, you get reconnected. That's fine. We'll let you back in. You'll be going to the waiting room as usual, but then Ruth will see you there and let you in as you show up again. Okay. So what's going to happen today is we're going to have a presentation. If you've been here before, I do see some familiar names, so welcome back. If this is your first time, then welcome. We're glad you're here. What's going to happen here today is a series, sort of a mix between presentation with slides and then demo using the JOSM application itself. Okay, so this is very much an introductory course or training session on JOSM. So it'll bring you right from the beginning of how to sort of get things started and get yourself sort of set up with JOSM, to actually using the software and actually using some of the basic functions and sort of important sort of tools that are used to get you up and running. Now, in a month, in 4 weeks' time, on August 2nd, I believe it is, it's another Friday, we're going to have another training. So that is a follow-on training from this one. So this is the introduction to JOSM. On August 2nd, we will have the advanced JOSM training. Okay, so ideally, if you want to join that one as well, we're going to be using the same link and that you're registered with. So after this one, maybe a bit of review, or maybe you're first being introduced to JOSM, but the idea here is for you to start using JOSM more regularly with all of your edits, so you can become more comfortable with it. And then with the next training on August 2nd, that Friday, we will be doing a more advanced option with advanced training with JOSM, where we will be going over some sort of key tools that we find very useful in working with JOSM, and in particular, working with validation. We won't talk about validation in that training. We're just going to talk about JOSM, but sort of getting people more familiar with the number of the different tools that JOSM offers. Now, as you'll see, JOSM has a lot of tools, a lot of capabilities. We can only sort of start to scratch the surface in this class and in the one that follows in a month, but it should give you a good foundation to get you on your way with using the software. Okay, so as I mentioned, we will be providing this recording and the slides for today with everybody that registered for this event. Okay, if you have questions while we're going through, please go ahead and put them in the chat window. Okay, and we'll address them as they come up. Myself, I'll be joining Naza today to co-present this training, and we'll pause throughout the actual presentation asking for questions, okay, and make sure we go through any questions that are in the chat window. If you see something in a demo that maybe we did too quickly, you'd like to see it demonstrated again, not a problem. We're happy to do that. Okay, so just go ahead and put those in the window, in the chat window, and we'll address them as they come up. With that, did I miss anything, Naza, or any other hub members? Did I miss anything for the intro? I think that covers it. Oh, one thing I'd like you to do, actually, if you can, in the chat window, if you wouldn't mind putting in a little hello and just letting us know where you're calling in from today. Okay, that'd be great. So we can sort of see where people are calling in from. We typically get a lot of people from a number of different countries. So go ahead and just sort of put that in there as a way of introduction, and we will get started. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to hand it over to Naza to begin the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. I am going to share my screen. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and let's begin. Okay, first I'm going to go over what is JOSM. JOSM stands for Java OpenStreetMap Editor, and it's a desktop editing application for OSM written in JavaScript. It runs similar to your ID editor, but it runs on your desktop instead of on your web browser. And it runs on all operating system, Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, whatever you have, it works on. It has some advanced editing tools. And what you do to download, so first you download data from the server, do your edits offline, and then you upload your edits back up onto the server. So it's a little bit different. It's not too different from the ID editor. The interface is slightly intimidating at first, but that's what this training is for, to hopefully get you guys accustomed to it and familiar with it. And it's a lot more efficient than the ID editor is. And it has a lot of great shortcuts that you can use in order to make your edits faster. So yeah. This is just what JOSM looks like. This is a screenshot. It looks slightly intimidating, but we'll explain all of the different features here and how to use it. And it's a lot easier once you know exactly what everything does. So this is just a side-by-side of the ID editor versus JOSM. And you can see how much faster it is to map buildings on the right-hand side using JOSM. Instead of using the ID editor where you have to map each individual node and then square the building, JOSM automatically squares the building, and you only have to map 2 of the 4 nodes for a building, and you can take away any chunk that you would like. And in my opinion, it's a lot more fun to use JOSM than ID editor. So here's a bunch of training guides. As a reminder, we'll send you guys all of this entire presentation as well as this recording after the presentation is done. So you'll be able to use all of these links if you need to. There's a lot of forums and guides and support that's free and quick and has been experimented with. So yeah, I encourage you guys to use all of these links and guides. So now we'll go on to how to install JOSM. The first thing that you need to do, since it does run off of Java, is you need to download Java first. You need to get the newest version, and oftentimes you have to update really frequently. Usually the updates are just to fix some bugs that it has. You will need Java 8 or higher. Then you can go on to downloading and installing JOSM. Once Java is downloaded, you can install JOSM, again, using this link, which will be shared in the presentation. You want to get the newest version and again, update frequently. Now we'll go through a little walkthrough on how to use the interface. So this is the interface when you first open it. It works on offline data synced by the user. What you do is you download data. As I said, you download it, work on it, and upload it back to the server. This is the first page that you will see, and it shows any updates, new features, or the OSM fundraiser. And now we're going to go on to the actual setup of how to set up JOSM. If you have JOSM open now, you can follow along with me, or I'll do a demo on how to do this as well later. So first, what you're going to do is go to Edit and then click on the Preferences tab. Then you're going to select the Connections setting, click Authorize Now, enter your OSM username and password, click Authorize Now again, and click Accept Access Token. And you want to keep the Preferences window open because we're going to keep on using it from here on out. And it's important to note that this demo right here is on a Windows. If you have a Mac OS, it's going to look a little bit different, but I have a Mac OS, so when I demo it for you guys, you'll be able to see how it looks on a Mac interface as well. All right, now we're gonna set up remote control. And what this does is it serves as a link between the OSM server and JOSM, which is located on your computer. So within the preferences window, you're going to select the remote control settings, click enable remote control, and then click OK. And again, keep the preferences tab open. We're going to use it just one last time. And we're going to do that to download plugins. One of JOSM's best features, in my opinion, is all of the plugins that you can download. There's a bunch of different ones, and I'm not going to go through them all, but the three that we really recommend are the Buildings Tools plugin, the Utils plugin 2, and the Mapathoner plugin. These are really great to be using while you're mapping. I really recommend it. So what you're going to do is you're going to select, you're going to go into the blue puzzle piece icon, which is the plugin icon. And then you're going to select all of the plugins that you want to download. And then you're going to click OK and download them. Now we're going to go on to navigating JOSM. This is what the interface will look like when you haven't downloaded anything yet. This is the map view. Right here on the left, you can see this is this big black box. It shows the data that you have downloaded from the OSM server, and this is where all of your editing will take place. On the left-hand side, right here where my mouse is, this is all of your editing tools. This contains any drawing tools, as well as like the show and hide buttons for the information panels. The main menu on the top bar can be customized depending on what plugins you've installed. The shortcut toolbar over here on the top right, this has shortcuts to any commands that you want to do. And on the right side here, this big panel, it shows you what data is currently downloaded, and this is where you can also run your validation tool as well as any other plugins that you have. Okay, now I'm going to go to JOSM and show you guys this in real time. So this is what you see when you open JOSM for the first time. And what you're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do is going to go to the preferences window, which since I'm using a Mac is going to be up on the top left side. I'm going to click on where it says JOSM, click preferences. It's going to load and this will pop up. So this is what it's going to look like for the first time. So you're going to go to connections, which you can switch between all of the different little bars here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to go to this one that has two little like blue panels. And this is connections. Mine looks a little bit different because I'm already logged into my account. But this is where you can do those steps that I said. So you're going to click authorize now, enter your OSM user details, click authorize now again, and then hit accept access token. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the plugins window. And the plugins window is on the left-hand side here again. It's that blue puzzle piece. I'm going to click it. It's going to load. And then you can see here, there's all of these different plugins that I can install. There's a search bar up here that I recommend you use if you want to do those three plugins that I talked about. So that was the buildings tools. You can see it right here. As well as the Utils plugin. So I have it clicked and Mapathoner. So how you do that is that if I had this unclicked, I would select it, press download list. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to do that. And then I would hit OK once it's done. Now we're going to keep this open once again, and we're going to go to remote access. So for this, you have to scroll down a little bit. And we shall see this little remote icon down here. And now we're in remote control, and I'm going to hit enable remote control. I already have it on for me, but you want to make sure that's enabled and then hit OK once again. And that's all. That's how you set up JOSM. Now we're going to go back to the presentation, and I'm going to hand it off to Richard.
Awesome. Thank NASA. Hi, everybody. Pardon me. One other thing I would mention about the setup, the nice thing with JOSM is that once you've enabled the remote control, once you've added those plugins and whatnot, next time you go to JOSM, you can close it down, open it up again. Next time you go to work with it, those settings are already saved. Okay. So you don't have to put in your credentials another time. Every single time you open it up, that stuff is all saved, which is great, which makes sort of using the software that much easier. All right, so let's look into mapping features. So you've got JOSM installed and set up, and you're like, great, I want to map. How do I get data into this thing? Well, here's let me put my camera on so you can see my smiling face. There we are. So there's, like any sort of geospatial software, there's more than one way to do something. So the first way I want to talk about is you can simply go to the file, download from OSM. And even then, there's two ways to do it. You can go to the file menu item in the upper left of JOSM and hit download, or the green down pointing arrow will also do that. Either way, that's going to launch a sort of download window where it presents you with what we call a slippy map, a map that you can sort of slip and move around, zoom in and zoom out. Then when you get to the area that you want to work in, you simply draw a box around the area that you want to work in, and it will use that box as the area to download the data that currently exists. All right, you'll zoom to the area that you want in the slippy map. You'll draw a box around the area of interest. Then you hit download. It's going to take that bounding box that you created and download all the data from OSM that's in that box. And it'll download it and put it right into JOSM for you. Now, the thing is, you got to remember that there's a lot of data in OSM. So if you try to do, a very dense, large city, say Jakarta, right, as a ton of OSM data. If you try a very large geographic area, it's probably going to say, no, that's too much data. I can't do that. So you have to go in, zoom into a smaller geographic area so it can actually download all the features that are there. So I'm not sure what the limit for download is, but the software will tell you if you have too much data, if you're in too much of a geographic area for it to actually download. So it'll actually do that for you. But once you do have a area of appropriate size for zooming in for data, it will download it and load it right into JOSM for you. Now, obviously, you're doing this from JOSM, so JOSM is already running. All right, so we're going to do this from within JOSM, and then it'll download it and put it right into the window for you. Okay, next slide, please. Now, a second way to get it, so maybe is to go to the OSM website. So maybe you're on osm.org, right, an OpenStreetMap site, and you're zooming around and you're looking maybe at your hometown or maybe some place that you are interested in mapping, and you're sort of trying to get a feel for all the data that are there. All right, so you can zoom to a particular area and simply take the URL and use that to download the data. Next slide, please. So when you're doing it this way, there's actually a download location window you can use, right? Again, going to the file menu, say open location, then you simply enter the URL into that window that pops up, and whatever you were looking at, right, that window that was in OSM, it will download those data right into OSM for you. Okay, so there's two different ways to get at it. Depends in which way you find easier, but always, regardless of which method you're using, make sure you're zoomed in far enough so that you're not trying to download a colossal amount of data, because it's going to choke and not be able to give you anything. Okay. All right, next slide. So you have the data loaded. Awesome. But you need to reference some imagery, right? So you need to have some imagery loaded. So when you're doing it in one of those two manners, no imagery is going to automatically load, because you're simply going to the OSM database and saying, right, look at this area of interest and pull down those data for me. Of course, if you're working through the tasking manager, chances are the preferred imagery will be loaded with the data that you select from the tasking manager. But for now, if that doesn't work, you always can load the imagery manually yourself. So on the top of the JOSM window, you'll see the menu bar, and there's an actual menu item called imagery. You see in the little animation here. You select the imagery, the drop-down pops up, and you're able to select which imagery you want. Bing, Esri, Mapbox, okay, whichever ones are available to the OSM community at that time will be available. And then you'll simply see it loaded in the right-hand panel where the data layers will be, and any imagery layers that you have will be showing up, will show up there as well. Next slide. So you also have more control. Okay. Let me back up. Right. So once you download the data, you'll notice that you'll see the sort of diagonal hashing lines across your screen, except for where the data that you downloaded are located. All right. That indicates that the area that you identified, say in your download window, that's the area that you should be mapping in. If you're going beyond that, you're beyond the study area that you had specified previously. If you're, again, going from the tasking manager, right, you'd have that pink box, you'd have that box identifying the outline of the task itself. Because we didn't do it that way, what OSM will do, what JOSM will do was add these hash lines, but there'll be a blank in the hash lines identifying your key area, your area of interest. So make sure you keep all your mapping within that particular area. Okay, next slide, please. So one of the other advantages of using JOSM is that you can actually adjust parts of the imagery to make things stand out a little more. So once you add the imagery that you want, okay, you can actually adjust things such as the gamma, because sometimes, as you know, if you're looking at imagery, sometimes the background and then the sort of the terrain that you're looking at and the features you're trying to map on top of that, right, are kind of hard to distinguish. So you can actually change the colorfulness, the gamma, that will, especially the gamma, will actually help some features pop out on the screen a little bit. So you have a little more control over how your imagery appears to you, so you can really sort of see the features you're working with. Okay, so again, you're adding the imagery, and then you can simply adjust some of the parameters of that imagery to make things stand out a little bit more. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so let's go to JOSM. So now I'll start sharing my JOSM because it's awesome. Let's go here and JOSM. Okay, so here's my JOSM window. I mentioned at the beginning, there are two ways to get data into your map. Okay, one was to use this green download button here in the upper left. Okay, or you can go to File and download data. Okay, you see the same green downward arrow. So I'll click on that. And let me bring this into view. Are you able to see the download window? Can I get a confirmation from somebody?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good. So you'll see here, I'm just zoomed into an area in my hometown, and you see this pink box that's here. That's the area of interest I want to download, but I can just sort of maneuver around the Slippy map, right? And I can just draw a box of any size, any dimension that I want. So if I want to just sort of download this area here, I've highlighted this pink box. Now I click download in the bottom here, and it's going to take that box as the bounding dimensions and then load in the data. And now you see here in my OSM window, the data that have been downloaded. Okay. Now, the other way to get data. All right. Now, say we want to go to OSM. So actually, let me do this and let me share my entire screen. So I'm going to go to OSM here. Let's go to screen 2. Okay. So now I go to OSM. So here I've zoomed into a corner of our campus in Washington, D.C. So here's a particular Washington Circle, as it's called, on a corner of on the northwest corner of our campus. And I say I want to download the data from this particular area. I've simply, again, move to any area you want. If I was to zoom out to here, it's going to be too much data, right? So I'm going to zoom into Foggy Bottom here, and then I'm simply going to say, take the URL. Okay, and I put that, I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go back to JOSM. Go to File, Open Location. And that brings up this Open Location menu item, or window rather. I simply paste the URL in there. Then I say download URL. It's going to go to OSM, grab the data, and bam, just like that. Just like that, I have the data for this area. Now you notice in the upper right here in the layers panel, I now have 2 data layers. Data layer 6, data layer 5. Right, if I can turn this off right? Data layer 6 is the one I just downloaded. Okay. But the other one is still there, right? If I can turn this one off, if I say right click on it and say zoom to layer, right? It's not really showing up yet. You see it's there very faintly. I need to activate it. You see this little green circle with the white check mark in the table and in the layers panel here. If I right click on my data layers and say activate, now you can actually see those data. So this is the first data I downloaded using the Slippy map. Okay, this is of my hometown. And you'll notice the diagonal hashing here. If I zoom in, and go over to the side here, you'll see how the hashing stops at the edge here, right? So it actually forms a box. That box coincides to the box I drew on the Slippy map. All right, but now I can go through and I can select on various features and identify them. Okay, if I want to go back to the other data layer, of course, I want to turn it on. I'll turn this guy off. I want to activate it, but I also need to zoom to the layer, right? Same thing. You'll see I'm back in the data here. If I zoom in, you'll see that the hashing marks here on the right-hand side, right? They end, indicating this is the area of interest, area that I downloaded, okay? Also, side note, if you're ever curious as to how to map sort of more complex features, topological features, you can download an area something like this, and then as long as it's done properly and you feel that the areas here are done fairly confidently, you can sort of select these features and sort of look at the tags and see how they are put together. Because right now I'm selecting K Street and it actually goes under the circle. So it goes actually underneath, and the circle itself goes on top, right? So a little bit of a tunnel here. So if you want to identify how do I create tunnels and how do I sort of mark them up in OSM, like one of the things you want to identify is like in the tags, like there's a thing called layer. This is like -1 indicating that it's below the base layer of all the other data. So anyway, just, an FYI, if you're looking how to map a certain type of feature that you haven't mapped before, go to an area where it's done and mapped well, and then select it and start looking at these features, selecting them, see how you have them tagged. If you don't understand a tag, look it up in the wiki, right? The map features wiki from OSM will explain everything, okay? All right, so we have our data, but we don't have any imagery. So how do we get the imagery? How do we get the imagery? Oh yes, that's right. There's actually a menu item called imagery. So you see on the top of my toolbar here, I see imagery. I click that, the drop down is going to show me all of the available imagery, right? We have Bing aerial imagery, we have Esri world imagery, Esri world imagery clarity, and we have Mapbox. We also have access to the OpenStreetMap. So the current OpenStreetMap data layer is there as well, right? So if you want to load that so you can see what's in OSM, and then compare that to what's in the imagery, bring those two together, you can do that. So I'm just going to load Bing imagery right now. I select that, and it loads below all my layers, right below my data rather. And you'll see it show up in the layers panel in the upper right-hand side here, okay? So remember, once I load the imagery, I can actually play with the various visual aspects of it. So looking at this eyeball icon here. So again, I'm in the layers panel in the upper right of JOSM. You'll see an eyeball looking icon here, and it's change visibility. So I could click that. Now I have these 4 different items I can play with. I have opacity, so I can make it transparent, right? I use this one sometimes with the actual OSM layer. So I have the OSM layer on, I'll put it maybe down to 50% transparency or opacity, so I can see what's in both the time to time. Between that and turning the layer on and off sometimes helps me identify what's going on. We can play with the colorfulness. Again, they start in the midpoint, and then the gamma, as I mentioned, you can adjust that. And so you start to play with these. And in like large urban areas like this, typically it's not that big of a deal, especially the imagery is pretty decent. Sharpness, so you can play with this as well. So the thing is, you can play with these to really get the image showing what you want and make the features that you're looking for, be it buildings or roads or whatever, have them sort of really stand out with the imagery that's going on where you are, okay? All right, I think that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, I think we go back to, before we go on to the next set of slides, are there any questions?
Yeah, we had a question in the chat. which of the images is the most recent?
That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question, Boat. And thank you for the question. The most recent, that's sometimes hard to determine. I know in ID, you can bring up the background filter or the background, activate the background tool, background information tool, and it'll tell you when you're zoomed in what the age range or the vintage of those imagery are. In JOSM, honestly, I'm not entirely sure if that's possible. A lot of times I'm looking at all the imagery in different areas to see, looking at vegetation growth, looking at infrastructure, construction. Maybe there wasn't a road and now there is. Maybe there were old growth trees and now it's a farm. So trying to figure out which one is most recent. That's a difficult thing. I don't know if anybody here who has experience with OSM and using that, looking at the vintage, would has any other information. But that's something we always sort of struggle with a little bit using JOSM. If you do know, by all means, please, or have an idea, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we can sort of look at that and talk about that again. But it's a good question. Thank you both. Any other questions? All right, cool. Naza, take on the next one, please.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to talk about basic operations in JOSM. And first, I'm going to talk about editing. Momentarily. So editing, in the editing tab, we can add points, lines, and shapes that represent real life locations using JOSM. The process is similar to adding nodes in ID editor. We draw to add new shapes and lines, and then adding in new information. We want to add new information that describes what we are drawing, and you don't, like Richard said, you don't want to map outside of your area. So where these diagonal lines are, that's not where you want to map. Now we're going to talk about the basic navigation of JOSM. You're going to use your right mouse button to drag the map, the left mouse button to manipulate any elements, and you're going to use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Now we recommend that you use a mouse just because it's a lot easier. If you're on a Mac, you can use your trackpad. The controls are going to be a little bit different, and it's, in my opinion, a little bit harder to use. So we really do recommend using a mouse. So there are three main modes of operating when editing. The first is select for selecting elements, viewing and editing their tags and moving them. Another one is add for adding elements such as standalone nodes, adding new nodes to create a new way or extending an existing way. And a way can, for example, be a highway. There's also delete, using Control Delete for deleting elements. You typically don't want to delete elements as much, especially since there's a lot of tools in JOSM that you can use to fix any elements that other people have used to preserve the history of the item. And there are three main basic elements: nodes, ways, and closed ways or areas. Nodes are usually dots that are used to mark specific locations for drawing the segments between locations. They're typically points that exist in space. Each node has a latitude and a longitude. A way is an ordered list of nodes displayed as connected by line segments. Usually these are used to describe roads or paths. And a closed way or area are ways which go in a closed loop, and they're usually used to describe parks, lakes, islands, or most commonly buildings. And all of these things can be used for more than all of these examples, of course. To draw a standalone node, you want to clear your selection by either pressing select or selection unselect all, or you press your escape button on your computer. And then you're going to press A, or you can select the draw nodes from the left-hand panel and begin to draw a node. You want to press the left mouse button somewhere in the map view window and then press escape, or you can double click to create just a single standalone node. And then you want to return to the select mode. To draw away, you want to press your left mouse again somewhere and another node will appear. And when you move your mouse around, you'll be able to see that there's a line connecting it. And then you can click again in another area and those nodes will appear joined with a line. If you keep pressing to draw away with you can keep pressing to draw away with several nodes and segments on it. And then to stop, either you go back to select mode, which is pressing S, or you can hit the escape key on your computer, or you can double click as well on the last node. To map roads, here's like a little demo of how to do it. You want to activate the Draw Nodes tool by selecting A, trace the road, and then finish by double-clicking on the final point, or you can press Escape as well. And then you always want to add a tag whenever you map something. So when you add it, if you're drawing a road, you want to add a tag by hitting Alt and the A key together, and then entering the key as highway, and then you can classify them. It's a little different from the ID editor because you want to be more specific. So a road, for example, can be unclassified, a path, a track, a residential highway, a tertiary highway, a primary highway. There's so many options, and you want to make sure that you do it as accurately as possible. So if you have knowledge of the area that you're downloading, then you can do it more correctly. The classification of the road should correspond to the role of the actual road in context to all of the other buildings and features that you're mapping, and not its condition or its visual appearance, because sometimes that can be a little bit deceiving. And to edit a tag for a road, you can hit Alt and the S key at the same time. To map land use, you want to activate the Draw Nodes tool by selecting A and start tracing the land use outline, finishing Escape by clicking on the original point to create a polygon. You can tag this feature again with Alt-A, or you can do it by hitting the Add button with the Tags and Memberships window, or you can use one of the presets, and I'll show you how to do all of these options in the demo. Residential areas are marked with the key equals land use and the value as residential. Type these values into the tagging fields, and then you want to press OK, just like with tagging any other feature. Tags describe geographic data within OSM and their attributes you attach to basic elements, nodes, ways, or polygons. And a tag is a key equals value. For example, the key can be a highway and the value can be residential. So you would have highway equals residential. A key is a string describing the general classification of a feature, for example, a highway, and the value gives more specific information about it. And we want to add these because it's very important that we classify the data as best as we can when we are mapping it. Keys and generic values are lowercase, and you don't use a space, but you use an underscore instead of a space. And this is very important to abide by as well. For presets and tagging, presets is kind of like a little shortcut in how to tag things. So you add a tag by hitting the Add button, and then the Add Values window appear, and then you can select a key or a value from the drop-down list. The drop-down list contains all the values in the downloaded area and all the known tags in the presets. When you add a preset, you can go to the presets menu, as you see here. It's going to be on the top of your screen. And you can search the presets if you would like. I use that most often when I'm using a preset. If you know what you want to tag your feature as, or it's also great to just like look through. You can look through all the different highway tags, water tags. Truly, there's a lot that you can do with presets. Okay, and now I'm going to show you guys all of this in JOSM. So first, I'm going to download from the server. So I'm going to go up here to the top left, and I've clicked this green arrow. And now my download area has come. And we're just taking this random piece of land in Brazil. I'm going to download this area. And again, I'm going to go up to the top and hit imagery. And we're going to use Bing today. You can use any imagery that you would like, of course. So now we've downloaded some data. So I'm going to review your basic navigation again. You can zoom in and out using the scroll wheel. So that's what I'm about to do. Move around. I'm going to press my right click and then hold it. And then I can move any way I want. And I just release my left click once I'm happy with it where it is. And then left click is to select anything. So if, let's say I want to select this waterway right here, I'm going to press left click and you can see it's changed color because I've selected it. And now I can click and hold and move it any which way I want. Now, I'm not going to do that move, but another thing you can do is add nodes. So either you can press A on your keyboard, or you can go up to the left here. On this left-hand panel, there's this line, and you can see it says draw nodes or A. And then you do one click to draw one node, one left click, and you can see I'm going to press escape, and I've drawn a standalone node. If I want to do a road, let's say I want to map this road right here. So I'm going to click once, and then every so often I can click again, create this road. That's quite enough. And then either I can double click on the last one, or I can press escape as well. And what I did up here was I pressed my select tool, so I'm not selecting anything, or I can also press escape. Now, let's say I want to tag this road right here. I can do it a multitude of ways. So I want to make sure that I have it selected. And then over here on the right-hand panel, there's this tags and memberships. And I can press this plus sign to add a tag. And I've got a pop-up window here. These are recently used tags that I've used. So let's say I want to do highway. So search for highway. And then equals, and it'll give me all of the things that a highway can be. So for example, highway equals raceway or residential. I'll tag it as residential for now. I can also do highway equals unclassified if I'm unsure what it is. And you can see now it's changed color just because of the plugins that I have. But now it's permanently tagged as highway equals residential. I'm going to delete it for now, and I'll show you guys another way to do that. So again, I select it, and then I go up to the top here, my top bar where it says presets, and I'll click that. And I can either search by preset, or we can go through all of these. And you can see there's a special one for highways. So I'm going to go highways, and I would say this is a street. And you can see down here, there's a residential. There's also all of these other options that you can use. But I want to tag it as residential. So that's what I'm going to do. And it brings up this huge pop-up. It's a little intimidating at first, but if you read through it and you have some local knowledge of how many lanes there are, what's the max speed, what's the number of layers, or like what layer does it reside on? if it's a smooth surface, or anything like that. I have nothing. You can also name it as well if you know the name of the street. I don't know any of this knowledge, so I'm just gonna press apply preset here at the bottom. And you can see over on the right, now it's tagged as highway equals residential. Now I'm gonna show you guys a land use. So let's say this area right here, we want to tag it. So I'm gonna go up to the top left again and to draw nodes. I've clicked it. And we're just gonna trace this. I'm not being super careful because we're about to delete it. But you definitely want to be very accurate when you're doing this. And then once I'm done, I'm going to click on the first node that I made to close it. Then I'm going to hit escape and go back on the top left to my selection tool. Or I can also hit S if I want to. Now, it's also important to tag this as well. So this kind of looks, I'm going to say that this is a farmland. Don't know if that's right, but we're going to delete it anyways. So I'm going to again go up to presets, go to, and I'm a little bit, I'm not that great at knowing where everything is, so I like to search. So if I want to do farmland, I'm going to search by farm. So you can see geography, land use, farmland. And I'm going to click it and press select. I don't know what kind of crop it is, and I don't know the name of it. So I'm going to leave that blank and then press apply preset. And you can see on the left here, our key is land use and our value is farmland. And there's this little red box that shows the inside, and that this is the farmland, not the outside of it. And you can see it's changed color a little bit. Now, of course, I don't want to keep these because these are not real edits. So if I want to delete something, I'm going to select it and then you press Control and delete. Or on a Mac, you hit the FN key and then press delete. So I'm going to do the same thing with this little road. And then I can also hit Shift to select multiple items. So I've selected this road, I've hit Shift, and I'm going to click on this node. And you can see they both turned red because they're both part of my selection. Or what I can do is I can click with nothing selected, and just on my select tool, I can click and drag. And this whole highway won't be selected, but these nodes that were in my selection. So I'm going to click, press Shift, click, and then hit Control and delete, and they are gone. And once I'm ready, if I want to, let's say I had something to upload, you would hit that upload button up on the top left here, that arrow. I have nothing that I want to upload, so I want to make sure that I don't do that. All right, are there any questions on anything I've done?
Nothing in the chat.
Say that again?
There's nothing in the chat right now, so.
Okay, cool. Then we will go back to the presentation. There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, Nasa. That's great. So now we're going to talk specifically about a couple of shortcuts and plugins. And as you saw, as Nasa was working through it, she was showing you the menu item and then identifying the shortcut. So another cool thing with JOSM, and you see it with ID as well, all the tools have some sort of shortcut, either a single keystroke or maybe a pairing or a triple sort of keystroke together that will invoke this tool. All right, so in the slides here, we're identifying in bold the actual keystroke for the shortcut, but when I'm demoing, I'll try and remember to show you where the actual button or the tool is located. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about, this relates to the buildings tools that you that the NASA demoed at the beginning when we're setting up JOSM. It's a plugin that you add, and it is a game changer. If you're used to creating buildings in ID, right? It's a great tool. You select the area tool, you draw around your building, hit the Q key to square the corners, and then you go ahead and tag it, right, as building. Building equals yes. At a bare minimum, building equals yes. Well, the buildings tool does all that for you in as little as 2 clicks. It's awesome. When I came across this, when I first started using JOSM, I thought that's why JOSM is so awesome. Just this tool alone was awesome. So basically, you can hit the building tool in the toolbar or click B as a shortcut. And what you'll see is your cursor will change to have a little building icon next to it. So you know you're in the building tools mode. And then when you zoom into your buildings, you can simply click the edge of the building or the corner of a building, trace along. I recommend you trace along the longest edge first, and then it'll draw the rest of it for you as you pull your mouse across the width of it. So when you use this tool, every corner will be at 90 degrees, and it automatically tags it as building equals yes. Okay. And you can see how quickly you can draw buildings using this tool. I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. And we always want those corners square because, I don't know, 98, 99% of the buildings in the world have squared corners, unless they're round, right? Huts and whatnot. But most of the buildings have squared corners, even if sometimes the imagery may be a little off nadir, so you're sort of looking off on an angle. Sometimes they can look like they have an angle, but if you were to look straight down with good imagery, chances are they're plumb. They have 90-degree corners. Okay, next slide, please. So some of our buildings aren't squares or rectangles, right? They're L-shaped or T-shaped or U-shaped. They have these different sort of protrusions or extrusions from them. So JOSM has a tool for that. Say you draw your building with the buildings tools, you know, you have your corners are 90 degrees, but there's a bump out, right? Maybe it's sort of L-shaped. By using the extrude tool, whose shortcut is X, you're able to double click on your building wall, on the line that represents your building, where that extrusion starts, and then simply click and drag the line for that extrusion. You can drag it in or out. So you can actually make buildings of all sorts of different shapes and sizes using this particular tool called extrude. Again, the shortcut is X, and you'll also notice when you're in extrude mode, the cursor will change. You have the crosshair. So it goes to the cursor, but you see you see it right now in the demo, has a right triangle sort of associated with it. All right, so always look at your cursor to identify what mode you're in when you're editing. All right, next slide, please. Circular buildings, super simple, super cool, and very easy. Again, done with the building tool, right? There's a second setting, I guess you can say, with the building tool. You're in the building tool. If you hit Alt-Z, right, you go to circular building mode. So again, you will see the icon change to like a little silo around building. And all you have to do then is draw the diameter of the building. And then it'll automatically draw a circle, put in enough nodes to make a circle, and tag it as a building, right? So it's taking all those steps and making them simplified, right? So creating the feature and tagging it and simplifying that whole process. And then to get back to sort of drawing buildings with squared corners or rectangular type buildings, hit Alt-R and it'll toggle back. So both of these are within the building tools functionality. It's just depending on what mode you're in. If you're in circle building mode or if you're in rectangular building mode. Okay, and you can Alt-Z or Alt-R to go between the two. And you'll see the icon change, so it'll tell you which one you're in. All right, next slide, please. Another way to create more complex features is using the building tool as well. So sometimes we have buildings that have an inner courtyard, right? So it's essentially like a donut. So you have an outer polygon that represents the outer dimensions of this particular feature. You'll need an inner polygon as well to represent those inner features. Well, we can use a couple of tools, the building tool and the merge tool, to actually make a building fairly accurate. So what we're doing here in the demo, we're creating one side of it as a single rectangular building. Then we select it. You see how it's red, right? So it's selected. Every building we draw after that with the building selected, any building we draw afterwards will be plumb to that initial building. So it'll be perpendicular and parallel to that building. So you draw the first one using the building tool. It's tagged as a building already, and it has 90-degree corners. we select that building. Again, still using the building tool. Select that building, right? Then we use the building tool, and every building we draw will have 90-degree angles to that initial building. So what we do is we draw a bunch of overlapping buildings. In this case, we have 4 that are touching or overlapping. Now, holding down the Shift key, we select all 4 buildings and use the merge tool, or shortcut is Shift J, and it actually makes one feature with an inner polygon for the courtyard and an outer polygon. Oops. Okay, there we are. Right, so it actually creates what they call a sort of a more complex geometric feature by using the building tool. All right, I'll demo that here in a second as well. All right, next slide, please. A couple of tools you can use to help with editing. So say you're mapping some new buildings, but maybe there are some edits in an area that you're working in that aren't so great. So the onus is on us as contributors to OSM to make the map as accurate as possible. Yes, we may be contributing to an area, and we're only looking to identify buildings right now, and we're adding new buildings. However, if there are buildings that are not traced well, it's our responsibility to fix them. If we can see there's an issue, we should fix them, right? So buildings that aren't squared, we can use the Q key, right, to square those corners. We can also rotate a building and make it larger or smaller. Sometimes I was just looking at some edits this past week where people were tracing buildings much larger than the actual feature themselves. I can select that, and then by holding down Control and Alt, at least on a PC, you can make it larger or smaller, right? Shift Control gives you the ability to rotate. So you can very quickly sort of manipulate features by using a series of tools between the Q key, Shift Control, Control Alt, G to unglue features that are stuck together, unglue them so they can be separated, as long as that's what needs to happen. I mean, obviously, we want the features we're creating to reflect what's actually in the imagery. We want to make the map more accurate each time. So using a combination of these tools, we can sort of have a fairly efficient workflow of editing these to edit these data, right? And as you get used to using these shortcuts, what I found is because I'm right-handed, I have my right hand on the mouse, and then I have my left hand on the keyboard, switching between different tools, selecting tool, buildings tool, extrude tool, rotate, resize, whatnot. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my JOSM screen again, and we'll demo some of that stuff, okay? Screen 2, let's go. Okay, so here we are. Actually, I'm going to draw in blank space. So I'm just going to turn off the imagery here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so buildings tool, right? Probably the single best reason to start using JOSM, in my opinion. If you want to look for the icon on the left-hand side in the menu item here, the menu bar here, you see where my cursor is, the big blue cursor on the left-hand side. It looks like a gray cinder block, right? A brick of some sort. You can click that, or you can click the shortcut of the letter B. So I'm going to click this, and now you'll see my cursor is a crosshair, and it has that little sort of brick icon to the bottom right of it, right? That lets me know I'm in building mode. So now I can simply click once, click twice, then I pull where I want to go, click the third time. Oops, let's turn the data layer on. All right, let me do this. Let me undo this. I forgot to turn the data layer on. I want to activate this data layer. And actually, let me back up. To get rid of these lines, I'm simply going to go say new layer. And I'm going to go over here somewhere. Okay. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. I just want to sort of get rid of any clutter that was on the screen. Okay, so now I'm in my building mode. I have my building tool turned on. You can use this building tool to make buildings with 3 clicks or 2 clicks. 3 clicks, I click once, I drag along the length of again, I usually suggest going along the long axis, first long side, click again, and then now it'll follow the width of the building anywhere I go. All right, and I click a third time, done. And if I switch to my select tool and I select this feature, you'll see over here in the right-hand panel, right, under tags and memberships, it's tagged as a building equals yes. And I know that each of the corners are 90 degrees, okay? Now going back to building mode, I click B. Now I'm in building mode. I can, if I do a left long click, so I click and hold down the left mouse button and drag, you'll see I'll also get the button going anywhere, the line go anywhere I want. So now I can do this. Now when I release, so that's like one click. Now I have the width to adjust. I click once more. So technically it's like one long left click and then one click. So 2 clicks total to make the building. Again, you can see because it's colored, that pink color, which indicates it's a building, right? So if I go back to select mode, it's selected here. Now, say I have this building, but it doesn't accurately represent the feature I'm trying to map because the feature I'm mapping actually is L-shaped. Who remembers what the tool is? Extrude, exactly right. If you thought extrude tool, you're exactly right. So the extrude tool, if you go to mode, right? And down here, extrude, shortcut is X. You'll see you have that right triangle associated with it. So when I click on that, now you'll see my cursor has a little right triangle associated to the bottom right. Now, if I want to make this L-shaped, I just want to identify where the L shape is to happen. So I say it's right here. It adds a node. I simply double click on that line where I want the extrude to happen. And then this line, I click and drag where I want the extrusion to happen. Okay, so using this tool, add a node here, add a node here. I can drag in and out. I can make it any shape I want. Okay, so you can have all sorts of funky shapes, and all of those angles are 90 degrees, all of them. Okay, so that's the extrude tool, very handy to adjusting features that have maybe bump outs, L shape, U shape, T shape buildings. To do that. Cool. Let me look here for a hot second. Ah, yes. Circular buildings. I'm trying to remember what else I'm supposed to show you. So I'm in building tool, right? So I can make buildings. If I hit down Alt Z, so I'll hold down the Alt key, hit the Z key. Now you see my icon has like a silo associated with it instead of the building, the little brick. Now I just need to draw the diameter. I just click and drag. I click, drag, let go of my click, and then I get my circle. And you'll see, you can tell by the coloring, the way it's rendered, but if I was to select it, you'll see that in the tags and memberships, the key is building, the value is yes. So it creates a circle and tags it as a building equals yes. So again, that part is done. Go back to a rectangle. Oops. Oops. What was it? Alt-E. Shoot. Now I have, whoops, sorry. There we are. Oh, I gotta get in the building tool first. Well, I got myself out of the building tool, silly. All right, so now Alt Z to go to the circular building tool, Alt R to go back to the rectangle type building. Okay. Now, I mentioned about making sort of more complex buildings, maybe one that has a inner courtyard. Okay, how do I do that? I'm glad you asked. We'll pretend that there's a building here that has an inner courtyard. We can do it by creating 4 square buildings using the building tool. We'll make sure they're square and plumb with each other and then merge them together. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to make one here like this. Then I'm going to overlap it. Oops, anybody know what I forgot? I'm going to do that. I need to select this guy first to make sure everything I draw after that is perpendicular and parallel to that initial feature. I'm going to make sure it's selected. Now that I have this feature selected, I'm going to hit the building tool again, and then I'm going to overlap them. And it doesn't matter where I draw it. I can draw a guy down here. I can draw it over here. Every feature I draw will be perpendicular and parallel to this initial one that I've traced. All right, so now I'm going to trace this guy here as well. Now I'll go back to my select tool. right? So now I can go to Shift J or join overlapping areas, Shift J. And then now I have one feature, it's a building, but it's a multi-polygon. It has a polygon for the outside, the perimeter, sort of the building footprint, and then one for the inside. Now, these are still two separate features. You can move them around independently of each other, but they have a relationship associated now coded into the software, identifying these two features together, make one feature, one building, and one is the interior polygon, one is the exterior polygon. All right. And even here, we can still use our extrude tool if things weren't quite right. Maybe this courtyard actually is a little bit smaller. Okay. So it works together like that. Then the last thing I talked about, I believe, was the using different tools. If somebody just used a tool to roughly draw a building, you can use the Q key to square it. Of course, you'd have to add the fact that it was a building. Where did my tag? Here we are. Well, building was yes. That's right. Tag as a building. If this needed to rotate, I can hold down the Control and Shift key, and then as long as it's selected, I can manipulate it. Right? But hold down Control Alt, hold down your left mouse button, and you can make it bigger and smaller. Right? So you can sort of fine tune the alignment and positioning of these features very, very easily. If I created another building here and it was attached, right? I'm just going to tag that as a building as well. All right, hit that Q, squared. Oh, both of these are one is squared, one is not. I can select them both, hit a Q key, square them both. But right, these are attached to each other. What if I don't want them attached to each other? I can hit the G key, say unglue, or simply go to Tools, Unglue, right? Under the Tools menu, you have the unglue ways, or simply the G button. You'll see the nodes that were glued together are now highlighted. Now I can take them and move them away. Okay, I can move them, and then I can make it larger. I can make this guy rotate. Maybe he's up on this side. So using a combination of these tools, you can sort of very quickly, manipulate the shape of a feature and correct it fairly easily, because these tools all come together pretty quick. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to the presentation, but I'll stop here. Are there any questions at this time? All right, keep yourself on mute, please, unless you have a question. All right, Naza.
Awesome. Okay. And now we're going to talk about launching JOSM from a task. So let's say you're in the Hot or Teach tasking manager. You want to make sure that JOSM is running first, and then you're going to find a project in the tasking manager to map. At the task selection stage, ensure that the editor pop-up menu has JOSM selected instead of ID editor or any of the other options there. You want to select map a task. First, you want to select a task from the tasking manager and then map a task, and it will launch in JOSM for you. If you want to change your default editor from ID, you can adjust this in your settings menu, and you can find this underneath your username and your personal settings in each of the tasking managers. You want to make sure that you upload frequently. Select the hard disk icon with a upwards green arrow, or on a Mac, it's just a green arrow. Or you can also do Control, Shift, and up arrow to display the upload pop-up. Here you can add a change set comment, and you want to make sure that you always add a change set comment before you upload back onto OSM. These are each of the different hashtags, and then you also want to make sure that you have your imagery labeled, whether you use Bing or Esri imagery. You want to make sure that you label it there as well. You can automatically obtain it. You can click a box to automatically obtain it from the layers, but you always want to make sure you have that as well. Then you hit upload changes or you hit enter on your keyboard, and that will send all of your data that you just mapped back up onto the OSM server. You want to make sure that you upload very frequently. About every 5 to 10 edits, you want to make sure that you're uploading. The window that appears shows a list of objects that you're adding and the objects that you're modifying or deleting. In the box at the bottom, you're asked to add a comment describing your work. For example, you can say you added new roads and features in my neighborhood, and you always want to specify your source, like I said. For example, like Bing imagery and local knowledge. For your first upload, JOSM will ask you to enter your OSM account details as well. You can also see your changes if you want. You can open your internet browser and go to the OpenStreetMap website and move the map to the area that you just edited, and you should be able to see your changes appearing on the map as soon as you upload it onto the server. In case you don't see your changes, it might take a few minutes or for your changes to be shown on the map. And this is just a like cheat sheet for all of the keyboard shortcuts, especially the ones that Richard just talked about. You can see each of the keys are highlighted and there's different tools, modes, all of the modes. This is very useful when you're first starting out on editing on JOSM. I know I used it a lot when I was starting out. So it's a great help to use and just have up while you're editing. All right, any other questions before we wrap this up?
Thank you, Naza. Yeah, no questions in the chat right now. But does anybody have any questions for any of this, or would you like to see one of the tools demoed again? We've got a few minutes left. We have about 10 minutes left of our time here. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, or if you'd like to put up a hand, we're welcome to we'll address those as best we can. One other thing I'll mention, if you're new to OSM, OSM, if you're new to JOSM, the cool thing as well, when you go to upload your edits in JOSM, it's going to do a cursory check for topology errors, right? So if you have buildings crossing buildings or roads going through buildings, things like this, or features that are untagged, it's going to alert those to you, bring those to your attention. It's going to put an alert on those so that you can see them and you get a chance to fix them before it uploads. Because it, of course, wants to make sure as many the data you're putting up are as accurate as possible, right? So another sort of cool built-in feature with JOSM is that it does a whole bunch of topology checks and tagging checks that I can do to sort of bring your attention to things that things may be wrong or incorrect, so you can have a chance to fix those before you actually finish the upload. So that's pretty cool as well. So at this point, I'll pause and leave it open for a minute or so to see if anybody has any questions. Okay. Hey, Brazil, how's it going? Good to see you. See you. So as I mentioned at the top, this recording will be shared with everybody that registered for this event, as well the slides that we used today will also be shared with everybody. Okay, so if you didn't catch everything today, that's cool. The idea is to introduce you to JOSM and how some of the tools work. And then our hope now is that you guys can start using and practicing, refer to the slides. We'll get those out to you. Probably won't be this week, but it'll probably be hopefully next week. We'll get the slides out to you and the recording once it's available, and use this as a reference to start working through and playing with the software. And the best way with it, like any software, the best way to get proficient with it is just use it. Start using it for everything. And if you're doing a minor edit to your hometown, I noticed the OSM, but I showed you how to download data, and I was using the area from Foggy Bottom, very near where on the edge of our campus, our university campus. I noticed that there's a new restaurant that just opened, and it's already updated on OSM. It just opened, I think, a week or two ago, and it's right on the data set there, and it's already updated on OSM. That's how, of course, as you guys know, the benefit of OSM, that we can update things very, very quickly when we see a change because we know the area, right? So we can make sure it's more accurate than what anybody else has. So that's very good. All right. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We appreciate your time. I know for some of you, it's very, very late in the evening on Friday evening. So thank you very much for staying up with us. We really appreciate it. Good to see some familiar names here. So it's great to see you guys attending these things. We really appreciate you coming. Again, if this is your first time coming, we hope to see you coming again. And we have another training on Friday, August 2nd, I want to say. On Friday, August 2nd, same time. This one will be advanced JOSM. So with that next training, we're going to assume that you all have used JOSM before, and we're going to not go over the sort of initial things we did here, but sort of talk about other tools that are very helpful with manipulating data and contributing and editing in OSM. Okay. So that, thank you all very much again, and have a safe weekend, and hope to see you again soon. Take care. And thank you, NASA. Again, great job.
Thank you very much, sir.
Very welcome. Thanks for coming.